Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robin Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Dilute the way, sharpshoot and march through your crew. It has nothing to do with MOK. Burning sage lit the way through the disarray. Hit the stage blaze, made them raise and come out to play. Y'all been taking double L's like you hang around a J. You're not down to blaze with two girlies from around the way. Can't leave rap alone. We got hella ground to break, and most these bitches motives fishier than rainbow.
Thanks for joining us on episode 27 of the Women in Vinyl podcast. You just heard Baptism by Blimes and Gab off their album Talk About It. Thanks to them and Crane City Music for the use of the song. Crane City is an awesome Seattle-based hip-hop label with the mission to promote local Black voices, in particular those of women and queer artists. They are committed to putting money and opportunity into the community and allowing artists to maintain rights to their music. Today's guest is Carrie Colliton, co-founder of Record Store Day. With Record Store Day right around the corner, we're excited to chat with her. She is the Director of Marketing for the Department of Record Stores, a nationwide coalition of indie record stores and the Jill of all trades when it comes to organizing and handling the flow of information to stores and the public. She's worked for indie record stores since the Record Exchange in college. The first Record Store Day took place on April 19th, 2008. Today, record stores on every continent except Antarctica participate in the event. Hey, Carrie, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today.
For those who don't know who you are, maybe you could tell us that and how you got into records and then found your way to Record Store Day.
Okay, well, my name is Carrie Colliton, and I am a co-founder of Record Store Day. And my day job, which sounds weird, and we can get into that later, but my day job is as the director of marketing for a coalition of independent record stores in the US. So that's what I've been doing for a while. I've worked at record stores since I graduated from college, a little bit of time in the radio world at the same time. And I came into records when I was really young and small. I'm an Army brat.
Oh.
Yeah. And I have two brothers, so I was the only girl. And we moved all over the place. Like every 2 years we would move, which is, not unusual. There's a lot of military kids out there who can totally relate. But I spent a lot of time in my room. We would move during the summers a lot. And if you're not actually in school, it's hard to meet other kids. So I'd spend a lot of time in my room and listen to records and little tiny radio, learning about all these things. And my dad would go away on business trips and he would bring things back. And he often went into record stores in these other cities and would bring me records back from places. So I was enabled from a very young age.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I remember I don't remember which year, but one year we moved during the summer. My birthday's in the summer. And we moved, I think, the week of my birthday.
Oh,
and I must have been really milking it because the guys who were unloading our moving truck were like, happy birthday. And my dad took me out for a ride in the station wagon. And I was like, and I didn't even get any presents. And he was like, look in the back. And there was this big giant record player for my new room. And it was fantastic. So
yes,
I apparently didn't have a choice. So I blame my parents. I blame and thank my parents.
Totally. I feel like we're all in that same boat. Yeah.
I visited my parents this weekend and we were just talking about the records my dad had when I was little. And I said, I got some cred the other day because I have an original copy of Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. And it was my dad's, and my dad was like, I love that record. I was like, I have it now.
He's like, great, you can bring that back next weekend. Thank you.
Right. I do wish that I still had his reel-to-reel tapes. He had like Sly and the Family Stone reel-to-reel tapes and things.
Wow.
And I was like, man, I really wish we kept those. But
Yeah.
no. I love all those old physical formats. See, I don't have a choice but to do what I do
Yeah.
because physical format is the thing.
It is. It totally is. I mean, and with that, like, how did you move from being an army brat record collector against your will into begrudgingly working in a record store? I'm guessing is the next step, right?
Oh, well, actually, no. There was like I went to college at Virginia Tech, which is in a glorious little snow globe of a town in the mountains of Virginia, near West Virginia, but in Virginia. And there were two record stores and a college radio station. And on my very first day of college, I went to the organizing event for the college radio station and pretty much just stayed and made all kinds of friends. And of course, at the time, records were what we played on the air, and it was just heaven. And this was also the time when college radio was really influential, and so labels were really into the idea of getting college kids all this great music to listen to and being the first to hear some of this stuff. And also the time when I guess labels had a lot of stupid money laying around, so they loved to fly in and be fancy and take all of us out to dinner. And we were all like, yeah, we'll take your money, but just give us the records. So I lived there, and Blacksburg tends to be a place where you stay after you graduate because it's just so wonderful there. And I stayed a little while, and I was working at a real radio station, a grown-up radio station. And I was also then just applied to get a job at the local record store. And I got the job after applying like 5 or 6 times, and I couldn't ever figure out why I wasn't working there already because I knew everybody. Everybody seemed to like me. And this is a thing that I saved for the Women in Vinyl podcast. It turns out there was a woman who worked there who didn't want me to work there because I was another woman.
Interesting. She was like the token?
I guess. I don't know.
Territorial. She's like, oh, this chick knows stuff about records. I don't want her here.
I don't know if it was that so much, or she just didn't like me, or I don't know. But I was told later that was the reason I hadn't been hired earlier, and I was a little pissed. But
I mean, rightly so.
Yeah. But anyway, water under the bridge. I started working there at that store, and that store was part of a chain at the time, locally owned. One man owned it, and they were chained. There were locations. I think at one point we were up to 14.
Whoa.
And so I kind of just worked my way up through the marketing side. Like I did marketing for my little local store, and then I moved to North Carolina to help open another store in Chapel Hill. And I worked in the Raleigh store. I worked in a bunch of stores, and then I started doing marketing. And the person who was in charge of marketing was Michael Kurtz, who is my co-founder of Record Store Day. So we've worked together since way before Record Store Day, like at this regional chain. And we helped to found this coalition of stores. And the idea behind that is you have these really successful regional stores, but they're still small entities. And to get anywhere in, I guess, any marketing or business world, it really helps to have economies of scale and work together. So we worked with other stores, and we created that coalition underneath Don Rosenberg, the owner of the chain. And then it just grew from there. Michael became the director of that coalition, and I became, his assistant director, and then moved up. And then once the idea of starting Record Store Day came about, that was it. And that's what we do now. So I've never, since high school, I've had one job interview my whole life. And
wow.
And well, I guess I've had 2, because I had that job interview where I finally got the job at the record store.
Just needed to do it 5 times.
I didn't have to do it a lot. I kind of created my own job.
That's great.
Yeah. And the one I got rejected for, the job interview that I count, was at a record label, and I didn't get that. So I'll work in the store part.
So you mentioned that Record Store Day sort of started from you and Michael working together. What were those initial discussions that made it come to fruition?
Well, Record Store Day is I don't know the right word for it, sort of an open source concept, really. And there are a lot of people, and at this point, Michael will be very upset with me if I do not say that for Record Store Day 2022, there is a book coming out that tells the story of Record Store Day.
Which we will link to in the show notes, I promise.
And he has worked very, very hard on, so I will say that. He and Larry Jaffe have worked very hard on it. But it was, when we were building our coalition, there were two other coalitions building up, and I should say there were other coalitions. There was a coalition of, or maybe two or three, of Black-owned record stores. There were regional coalitions, like a Chicago area one and an Atlanta area one. And as record stores closed or merged or faded away, these three coalitions, Department of Record Stores, which is ours, Coalition of Independent Music Stores, and Alliance of Independent Media Stores, they kind of grew and started really working together, because we decided at one point, hey, look, the world's not large enough for us to be competitive.
Yeah,
sure.
There are markets in the country where there is a member of, like, three record stores who are members of, somebody's a member of each coalition, and they probably wouldn't have spoken highly of each other in the past. But first of all, as you mature as people and businesses, and then as you watch your industry kind of shift and the focus goes somewhere else, you realize, oh, we're all here and we're all doing the same thing, but we're doing it in our own special way, and there's definitely room for all of us. Let's work together.
Yeah.
So we sort of decided, well, it's silly for us all to have separate meetings and make the labels come meet with all three of us. Why don't we have a meeting where we can do this all together? Let's at least test the waters and see. So what would it look like if we brought 120 stores together? What would it look like if we then invited Newbury Comics? What would it look like if we invited, some other stores? And we had those meetings a couple of times, and they went pretty well. And then at one of the meetings, there had been some emails, there had been some conversations. You can read the book, find out more.
No spoilers.
And the idea, yeah. And the idea of, every news article I read, if they mention record stores, it's about how they're all gone. Everybody assumes that the only way to get records anymore is streaming. Why don't we just have a party and celebrate the day? Because that's what Free Comic Book Day did. I mean, at its heart, it was really about the actual physical thing, the comic book, but it did celebrate independent comic book stores. And maybe that's a model we could look at. But let's just basically have a party and put out a press release and say, hi, we're indie record stores. We're here. We're good. We're almost thriving. Why don't you actually
come in and give us your money?
Yeah, or do some journalistic research and write some accurate stories.
Right. And oh, hey, Metallica is gonna play, because why
not? Hey, these guys like records.
Right, Paul McCartney said this was a good idea. Billy Bragg likes it. Metallica's gonna show up. Come on. And it was kind of like, okay, those old movies where they're like, we've got a barn, let's put on a show, where you decide to do this and you start talking about it before you've, air quotes, confirmed the talent or whatever. Right. Yeah. So then we Michael mostly went out and talked to labels and said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Some of them were totally on board from the very beginning and had these ideas like, oh, we could totally put out records just for that day, or like, oh, well, yeah, let's get somebody to go and sign records on that day, or let's do whatever, let's give out promo samplers of things. And it just grew. And Metallica really were the first to say, yeah, we get it, our hometown
roof. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first year they agreed to sign, and I wasn't there, but I don't think they really understood what that was going to mean.
Yeah.
And like, I, I really don't, because they were there for a while, and they, to their credit, everybody got through the line, and it was, and the response to it was just so joyful. I mean, at its heart, it was a big party. We didn't really know exactly what it was going to do, or exactly what record store day meant, or exactly what you do at a record store day. Still don't know what you do at a record store day, because you could really do anything. But it was just so joyful, and it was very small. I think there were less than 200 stores participating that first year, and in terms of the releases, which have become such a massive part of record store day, and rightfully so, there were, I think, definitely under 20 that first year, which grew pretty quickly.
Yeah.
To where we are now. I think for 2022 we're at about 350, I think, in the US. The UK is larger than that. Their list is always longer than ours.
And that's one of the questions I had, was how you've seen this evolve since then, and when did the expansion start out of the US?
The second year.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, literally the second year. And I think, it, like I said, our goal was to put out a press release, and it worked because there was a lot of press immediately. There was a lot of good press, surprising press, like, oh my God, record stores still exist, and they did this thing. And I'm pretty sure it was Spencer Hickman, who worked at Rough Trade in the UK, contacted Michael and was like, hey, we want to do this too. And then it grew from there. So I think the UK was next. They were the second year, and then France and the Netherlands and Spain, and grew that way. And then Japan, because they have, of course, legendary, super special record store culture.
Yes.
There. And I guess this is maybe a good opportunity for me to say that one of the misconceptions about record store day is that, or maybe it's not about record store day, but about independent stores, is you can be a chain and still be independent.
Yeah.
Newbury Comics is pretty large. They have quite a few stores. They're owned by one man,
Right.
who is actively involved, or was. And Sunrise, sort of the same situation.
Yeah.
The other thing about Sunrise in Canada, because to this day, we get people emailing and saying it's not fair that Sunrise is part of this in Canada, and we get that about some stores in the US too. But honestly, without Sunrise, there wouldn't be a record store day in Canada.
Yeah.
There just aren't the numbers of indie stores to make the financials work. But
And what do those stores, like, what parameters do they need to have besides being independently owned?
well, it's different in every country. Like, for instance, in Canada, they require, I believe, that the stores sell new vinyl, sell new releases. That's not a requirement in the US. Criteria, I guess, would be like at least more percentage of your business comes from record sales than, say, guitars, or because there are a lot of stores, and the climate being what it is, there are a lot of stores that need to branch out and should branch out, and that is totally fine. Like, do you also sell turntables? Great. Do you also sell guitars? Great. Is half of your space a barber shop? Very cool. Is it a bar? Is it a restaurant? Is it a pie shop? What, a bookstore?
Yeah.
But primarily you promote yourself as a record store, and your customers see you as a record store first.
What does the day-to-day look like for you at the coalition?
Well, I guess it all depends on what time of year it is, and what release schedules are like, and how much record store day gets built into that. Because all the coalition stores are also part of Record Store Day. So anything I do for Record Store Day affects them as well.
Right.
But I maybe I'm creating an email that sends out our charts for the week and doing marketing on social media for the coalition, or booking programs. That's the way we're structured, is the labels spend marketing dollars to make sure that we're promoting the fact that you can buy these records at record stores.
Right.
As Record Store Day has grown so much, we're in our 15th year. What is the next 15 years of Record Store Day? And that may drastically change my day to day, but it also feels like the things I do for the coalition, I also kind of do on behalf of all the other stores too. They may just not really know it. Like,
Right.
am I talking to someone at a label about new releases that I will then share with the stores, or am I talking to Billy Fields? I mean, that's the sort of thing. Like, are we talking to them? Are we talking to MRC Data to get clarity on something? Are we helping a store who's having trouble with a shipment? Just kind of being a sounding board for stores in my coalition, helping them talk to each other, giving them ideas on things, helping them with marketing, getting clarity, because as the labels and distribution staffs get smaller and smaller and smaller, and everybody gets more stressed and more stretched out, and communication comes down to like, well, we said this one thing in this email at 3:00, and at 4:30 we're saying something different. Oh, there's an update at 5. Oh, wait, no, at 8 p.m. East Coast time, I sent this email out. What do you mean you didn't get the information? It could be a lot. It could be really stressful. So,
Well,
Totally.
and what do you say to people that, because I had on here, like, what are some challenges that you face? But I feel like there's a lot of people that love Record Store Day, but then there's those other people that have this negative connotation about you either not supporting the indie stores anymore or clogging up all the pressing. What is
yeah,
sort of your response to those kind of things?
I would counter by saying, I'm not 100% sure you understand how it works, why it works, what we're doing. And I would just say, talk to us about your assumptions. And when you start talking to people and like explaining, like, okay, but what about this, or what you're upset about is not actually the case.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of it when we hear from stores who have problems, and a lot of them are lashing out, and that's fine. I understand it. It's a frustrating business. Like, you aren't opened by a major, to have an account with a major, and you're taking it out and you're thinking major labels are the worst, and major labels have taken over Record Store Day, so Record Store Day must be the worst too.
Right.
I get that. It's easy. But first of all, call us and maybe we can help you with that.
Totally.
Second of all, some majors aren't taking on new accounts right now. It doesn't mean you can't be a great record store. And third of all, Record Store Day has nothing to do with you being an account at the majors. We
Yeah.
play no role in that game. And then customers have that same misconception. Like, my store you never send anything to my store. That's a big one. You never send anything to the small store where I live. It's like, okay, I have my stock answer, which is, we don't send anything to the stores. We don't sell anything to the stores. They make their own decisions. Allocations happen. But, if your store didn't order it, there's no chance they're getting it. If they only got a few, it's because nobody got too many.
Yeah.
Right.
And last year, we even kind of took a step into the process of allocations. Before, we were just like, well, open source, you order and they send you things. But things started getting so bad with production and distribution and supply chain that we kind of like, okay, we're going to step into this now. We're not going to say who gets what, but we're going to look at it and make sure it's a fair process. And to be perfectly transparent, it was some of the coalition stores that got hurt by this, some of the bigger stores who thought the system was perfectly fine. And it's us kind of saying, it needs to be fair for everybody.
Right.
So that means we have to kind of step in and do some of the work and help with this. Okay, we'll do that if it's more fair for everyone. And you hear from stores who are like, yeah, I got less than I thought I would, but that means everybody got some more, so that's cool.
So how about ambassadors? How does that work?
It's sort of like when they have a new pope, there's a white smoke. Ours is like all the record stores, the turntable start spinning backwards when we have a new one to announce. So that's a really fun thing that has also grown. I mean, you asked earlier, like, how has Record Store Day kind of grown? And the answer is in every possible way. More stores, more releases, more attention, more events, more ambassadors, more sponsors. The ambassador thing, literally, an artist came to us, Jesse Hughes from Eagles of Death Metal, and he said, you need somebody to be your ambassador and fly the flag for you. I'll do it. You're like, okay. And then the next year, I was interviewing his bandmate, Joshua Homme, for something about them Crooked Vultures. I was interviewing him, and I was like, your boy Jesse was our ambassador last year. Are you going to let that stand? And he was like, oh no, I'll do it. And I was like, I'm recording this. And he's like, no, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So he was on the hook. And that was just kind of on the fly. I hadn't even talked to anybody. I was like, it was just some thing to say to him. and then after that, we started getting people coming to us and saying, well, what about this person as the ambassador? Like, people would pitch to us. And a couple of times people have pitched to us and it has made total sense. Mm-hmm. And a couple of times we've pitched to people and said, well, what about this?
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of a shame that you can only have one a year, because obviously I would like that list to have more artists of color in more genres and more women, but you can only have one a year. And you do need, I mean, it's a fun job. You don't even get a free parking space. I mean, it's not like, I mean, I feel like we should make a sash or something, but we don't even have that.
You already know who my nominee is. I told you on that.
I do. I do. Well, we do have a short list.
I think that since they've already had Dave Grohl, who I love. They've already had Ozzy, who I love.
And see, they're both perfect for this.
They're both perfect. And last time we were talking, I was like, RuPaul needs to be the next.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's true.
So we do have a short list, but the ambassador has to, first of all, want to do it.
Yeah.
Second of all, has to legitimately be someone that you can imagine being in a record store, which leaves out some artists, honestly.
Yeah.
Even if they may want to be in a record store. And then they have to be a big enough name that it makes sense. If I have to explain to too many people who the ambassador is, then that's kind of,
right.
an ambassador fail, I guess. But so far we've been really lucky because everybody's been, I mean, it's, hi, will you tell the world how much you love record stores for a year? And everybody's been really amenable to doing that. And I do know who it's going to be next year, because Taylor was a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
But there will be no spoilers. But that's the thing. We've had to start working so far in advance that we already know who it's going to be. And that goes back to, like, we have calendars. We know when things have to start. We're not clogging the presses. And if we are, then it's clogging the presses with things being made for
next year,
Record Store Day 2023.
Yeah.
Because we are already there.
Well, and that's my question. Like, going in the before times, so back to 2019 when things were kind of still normal.
Yeah.
Move forward to March of 2020 and everything was starting to shut down. Can we talk about that and how quickly you guys had to pivot? Because and for those people that maybe aren't familiar with Record Store Day and its history, usually they pick a day in April because it's usually globally a temperate and a nice time to stand outside and do things. Sometimes not so much in Canada, but that's fine. And in 2020, you had to decide that you were going to do it 3 times so that you could accommodate different things. So can you talk about that process a little bit?
We had to decide to do something.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know it was 3 times, but that was, I mean, obviously the pandemic was challenging for everybody. Let me just state this beforehand. If it comes across that I'm saying we had the hardest job in the world, we absolutely did not. I'm just going to say that right out. So we started thinking like, well, what can we do? Okay, we have to change the focus of Record Store Day. Record Store Day is a party, right? That's a celebration. The point of that day is not the releases themselves. The point of the day is the store you get those releases at. We can't do that in April next month because Italy's closed, the UK is not looking great. So we first moved it, I think, to June.
Yeah.
We said, okay, this date is now going to be in June because we were optimistic, foolishly optimistic. So then we decided, okay, we're going to do this much later in the year, August, September, October, split it up. The list that went out that year was the same one that should have all come on one day in April. And it was pretty big.
Yeah.
So we went to the labels and said, hey, the titles you have on our April list, which ones can you please hold on to until August, September, October? If you can't hold on to it, put it in August. We totally understand. But it was like that moment in It's a Wonderful Life when you're in the bank. Like there's a run on the bank. What do you need to get through? And can you hold out until the next one? And so we're splitting the list up. We're working on that. And then we're like, hey, this isn't Record Store Day. Yeah. We need to make it clear that this is something different because we don't want the optics of a store having a Record Store Day when all those people who, like I said earlier, it's really easy not to really look into the truth of something, but just to like take it and run with it on social media. Like they're still having Record Store Day. How irresponsible of them. It's like, well, but we're not. We're doing it totally different. So we called it something different. And we were trying to figure out what to call it. And I was like, let's just call it a street date because that's what it is. Turns out in Europe, they don't use that term. So it became a drops date, which is cooler, I guess. Anyway. And we bent some of the rules too, where like on Record Store Day, stores can't sell online until the next day, 24 hours later. But that would maybe kill, some stores. Like there were a few stores in the US who had made their plans when they were going to open their doors and customers were going to come in by appointment or 5 at a time, and then somebody on their staff tested positive for COVID, so they couldn't open at all, and they're sitting there with this outlay of product. What are they going to do with all these releases? Okay, well, later that afternoon you can put them online and sell through them.
Right.
And stores did that really well. And we tried to be very clear. This is not Record Store Day. This is a drop. And the purpose of the drop is to get revenue into these stores so that they can be here for, optimistically, Record Store Day 2021. But we really did have to pivot and have conversations. And some of them were pretty heated in the US and then among the international organizers as well, because everybody was stressed and trying to do the right thing, and we had to make compromises. And even that compromise of selling on the same day, like that saved, I think, the entire Record Store Day Ireland. Like Ireland went on lockdown like a week before Record Store Day. They weren't prepared for it, but again, they'd paid for it all. So the way we handled it kind of saved them. It saved some stores here in the US. And we were very clearly trying to make the case like this is not Record Store Day. We're not talking about a party. We're just talking about getting revenue into the stores. And then that's what the drop states became again in 20, my years are bad, in 2021. And again, we were thinking, can we do it? Can we have a day? Can it maybe just be later? And it became pretty clear, like, yeah, there may be some stores who are going to try and do something in their parking lot on the second drops date, 2021, but doing it in April, at that point, I think the decision to do it in June and July was more about supply chain and distribution than it
Right.
necessarily was about the pandemic, because they just spent, 12 months figuring out how to safely serve their customers. Everybody at a record store really had to be creative and pivot, and I'm actually really proud of the things that we did to help, because that's really all we were doing was saying, okay, what do we need to do? How can we help? We have regular Zoom calls where you can talk to each other. Where we have as record stores has grown, we've recognized, okay, we need to maybe be doing other things to help them be a community
Right.
outside of maybe in their own coalition. So we started our own conference, because why the
Yeah.
hell not? There isn't one for record stores, so we just started our own.
Hold that thought. It's time for an Amanda Fact.
During the 1920s, two engineers with the Bell Telephone Laboratories developed high-quality public address system with a wide frequency range collection with low distortion. It was not long before this technology was repurposed for the use of recording sound. And the Western Electric Recording System, known as the Westrex, was born. Welcome to the electric era. They say it took only a few weeks for HMV, Victor, Columbia, both in the US and the UK, to switch over to this new technology. And as we might say nowadays, they went electric. I'm sure Dylan expected similar enthusiasm when he made the same switch, but we all know how that turned out. Wah, wah.
Are you a producer, engineer, or broadcaster? Do you want to be? Either way, Nugent Audio is for you. Nugent creates innovative, intuitive, professional audio tools for high-end music producers, post-production engineers, and broadcasters. Their products make it easier to deliver better quality, save time, and reduce cost. As a Women in Vinyl podcast listener, you get 20% off your next Nugent Audio purchase using code WOMENINVINYL. Go to nugentaudio.com/womeninvinyl. And now, back to the episode. Well, as we start to wrap up, I think one of the other questions that we had was, what are some of the craziest things that people have tried to make? I know there was a blood-filled record.
Yeah, there was. I believe that was Miley and the Flaming Lips.
Mhm.
The Flaming Lips are just above and beyond when it comes to crazy stuff. Although Jack White does some pretty cool stuff too. Like that was a cool thing Jack White did. I think they recorded it at Third Man on the day, went and had it, I guess, mastered in the Blue Room. They can do all that in the Blue Room, and then pressed and released on the same day. That was pretty cool. There was I think it was the Fat Boys that actually was in a pizza box,
Nice.
like a literal pizza box.
Gross.
That was, if it had a grease stain, that would have been just like
Yeah.
chef's kiss. Oh my god. That was pretty perfect. I'll be totally honest with you. There's so many that my brain kind of forgets the cool things, and I have access to a lot of them. We have an archive.
Cool.
Um,
That was going to be my question. Do you get one of everything? Because that
Not
would
me.
be the best.
Me personally, no, I don't. People don't believe me either. I shop on Record Store Day, and
Amazing.
my boyfriend shops too. He looks at the list and picks his things and waits in line, goes
See,
and
and
shops.
I feel like that's a huge talking point right there, because like people think that automatically, like, oh, well, the store owner's going to hold these back and it's going to be this, blah blah blah. But like you yourself are going and standing in line,
Yep.
and like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
I love that.
I think most stores and their employees understand the point of the day. I mean, that's not to say some store owners might not say, okay, give me 3 titles for the employees, and say, give me 3 titles. Like, you can't get everything. Not everybody's going to get everything, but they probably don't do that on the stuff that's really tight.
Yeah.
They probably don't. But yeah, it's because it is about the customers. I mean, that's the celebration, right? And the stores that do it right, that really get it. There are stores that are in it for the wrong reasons. I feel like they weed themselves out pretty quickly. We do have stores every year who break the pledge and are no longer part of Record Store Day. And that's a bummer. That's a really hard phone call to make. And that's where I get a lot of, well, you can't be the final decision maker. Let me talk to someone else.
Right.
How often does it happen that somebody does like an unofficial Record Store Day release? And like, is that like a huge no-no in your guys' eyes? Or is it like, you know, like independent labels trying to enrich their local stores or whatever? Like, how is that looked on?
Well, it's different if it's like a regional label, you know, who's making a copy for the 3 record stores in their market.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's great. There are labels who are putting out releases and actually calling them unofficial Record Store Day releases, and that becomes problematic mostly for the stores because customers don't understand the difference.
Right.
When it says Record Store Day on the social media post, they don't understand that. So a store wanting to feel like I got to take care of all my customers brings it in, but that's a monetary outlay that the store has to make, and they feel like it's not a great thing, but it's not awesome. But you know, if you're in it for the right reasons, I guess it's cool.
I see a lot of people that want to like have a release coincide with because they're like everybody's going to be there anyway. So
yeah, I'm not sure that's the right move because
money is allocated.
well, honestly, the stores open to buy dollars are not the highest right then. Like that's probably not when they're going to be bringing in a lot of other titles. And I do think it's nice to say like, okay, maybe release it the week after, you know, and then promote it on Record Store Day.
Totally.
So that people will come back in the following weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. There are a lot of people there. That's the time to hand out your swag promoting your record to everybody in line.
Totally.
Right.
Like, come back to this record store in 2 weeks and get this record.
So with the number of nations and countries that are participating in Record Store Day, are they adopting Black Friday as well globally?
They are. I think
that's so funny.
Well, I think it was creeping anyway, the idea of Black Friday. Yeah. But I think what they look at it as, and it's kind of nice if you look at it this way, it's nicer if you look at it this way, is the kickoff of the gift giving season.
Right.
So it's like, this is when you buy presents for people. This is where you should buy presents for people. So
I buy more presents for myself.
Right. Or yourself. Yes.
Always.
Yeah. The list functions as a wish list as well. Like, make other people buy presents for you.
We always had my mom with us because she would always come visit us for Thanksgiving. Now we live local, so she doesn't have to do this anymore. But she'd come to Nashville, and we'd be like, all right, tomorrow, wake up early. We're going, we're going to go stand in line. So all of us are outside at Grimey's. We're getting our coffee.
Nice. See, look at that family togetherness. I love it. I love it. That's the goal.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I mean, it's, I remember going to my first few record store days and like Instagramming it and like talking to people about it. And they're like, you're such a weirdo. Why do you think people care about your record collection? And I'm like, they do.
Oh,
These
they
are my
so
people.
do.
Shut up. It's fine.
They so do. I mean, yes, everything is very stressful, and I'm the one who sees all the social media comments, and I'm the one who has to kind of deal with the stores being jerks and all of that. But on the day itself, and to some extent on Black Friday, it really kind of comes together. And I love seeing the stores' Instagram accounts, and I love seeing people's Instagram accounts. And that's the other thing we hear a lot, is that flippers ruined Record Store Day. It's like, well, only if you let them, because flippers have nothing to do with Record Store Day.
Yeah.
Everything gets flipped. Oreos get flipped because
what?
But flippers only ruin Record Store Day if you allow them to, or if you pay their ridiculous prices.
Yeah.
And everything gets flipped.
Yeah.
And the number of pieces, you can tell by looking at people's Instagram, where they so happily show off their record collections, which is a great use of Instagram.
Totally.
Showing off your collections. You can see how many record store day releases actually go home and slide into somebody's collection like they're supposed to. I mean, even if you go to eBay the day after and you look at all the ones that aren't record stores with legitimate accounts, and you total it all up, it looks like a lot. But if you total up all the record store day releases that came out, it's a tiny percentage. And, I love looking at that day online, and just my feed is just filled with record stores having the greatest day and having parties and people bringing them cookies and all that. It's a heartwarming thing.
Totally.
Well, I think we should ask the question.
Oh God.
In this episode, our guest has prepared.
Not really.
And she called it the dreaded question, the question that shall not be answered.
Because I just want to say that prepared is the wrong word. The guest has stressed about it in advance.
This is how you know that you're part of our tribe.
Yeah.
Not prepared.
I love it.
Not prepared in the least.
It's the best. Just from the hip. Just pew pew.
All right. So we were going over this list of songs, and I'm a very pop oriented person. Like, I love a good pop hook, and but I'm also like, I was feeling like I was leaving artists out, and I didn't want them to be offended.
Oh, bless.
So it's probably going to be a 7-inch box set.
Okay. We're open to that.
I think part of my problem was I was like, well, that song wouldn't fit on a 7-inch. That couldn't possibly be it. And I was told to not overthink things. So I want my 7-inch because I'm still thinking about it as a desert island sort of thing. So on one side would be Life on Mars, David Bowie.
Perfect.
Because that's contemplative, and and the other side would be Sir Duke, Stevie Wonder, because my happy dancey side. So
Nice.
And then my others would probably have The Clash and Wilco and Teenage Fan Club and Blondie and the Go-Go's, and
It's great. That's fantastic.
There you go.
That's great.
Carrie, this has been so fun and so overdue. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you and all you do.
All the things you do.
Thanks. See you in the record store.
May the force be with you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us on the Women in Vinyl podcast. You can join our ever-growing list of sponsors. Other record labels: Selector, Couple Design, Eargasm, Groove Washer, Glowtronics, New Gen Audio, and Vinyl Revolution Record Show. And thanks for sponsoring the show. Hey, as always, you can join our conversation on Instagram or send us a note at media@womeninvinyl.com. Clock us. Send us info. If you have a question, we got the answer, or we'll find it. We won't lie to you. And check out womeninvinyl.com for past episodes, the store, the job board, and the library of resources. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us a review on your favorite podcast delivery method. You can also contribute to furthering our mission at patreon.com/womeninvinyl. Hey, guess what? This episode, 45 minutes. You know there was more. You want more? You get more. Go to patreon.com and you can get more. And you'll find all the B-sides, the deep cuts, and the amazing extras, including longer episodes, and contribute to the creation of scholarships and educational opportunities to further the demystification, the infiltration of more women and non-binary identifying humans into the vinyl making space, decreasing those turnaround times every week. Yeah, we love your records. We want you to love them too. womeninvinyl.com.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.